Hello! So you may all know me as the art person who draws lizard people a lot, and you are correct. That is me. My thing is art, I make art. But I am here today for a different reason. I wanted to try my hand at making a video essay. Not my usual content by a long shot, but I found myself thinking about this topic and ranting about it a lot, so I thought I'd just channel that energy and actually make something with it. I just want to get it out there. Part of my inspiration for wanting to make this was also because there aren't many videos talking about this movie out there, from what I can see anyways, and the bigger names that do have seemed to mostly praise it. So I'm here to fix that problem. Also, I apologise for the not so great mic quality. I don't exactly have the best setup for this stuff. Just be thankful my mic works at all, because the last one I had started connecting to radio frequencies. Anyways, so How to Train Your Dragon. Let's talk about that. How to Train Your Dragon, the first one, is one of my favourite movies of all time. I saw it when it first came out in the cinemas when I was like 9, and I fell in love with it instantly. It has great music, great characters, a really nice story, dragons, and I also happen to love animation. How could I not love this film? There are definitely things about it that do annoy me very slightly, and I don't think this movie is perfect, but How to Train Your Dragon just has a very special place in my heart, to say the least. However, as the title of this video already says, I have some things to say about the third movie, The Hidden World. Oh boy, do I have some things to say about that one. Also, this is a kids film, so who cares, and animated films are for kids is a load of BS, and I'm not going to entertain either of those points. So, without further ado, let's get into this. Oh, and right, spoilers for How to Train Your Dragon 1, 2, and 3, and the 2011 Christmas special, Gift of the Night Fury. So, I saw How to Train Your Dragon 3 when it first came out in the cinema back in January of 2019, and at first, I liked it. Sort of. I was so excited for its release, somewhat disappointed with the design of the Light Fury, but still excited. For a while I defended the movie and jumped on anyone who said it wasn't good. Not my proudest moment, I must say, but what happened, happened. After watching it though, and even during the film, there was this part of me that was saying something felt off, but I couldn't quite put my finger on it. I dismissed it and continued my praise of the film though, because it's How to Train Your Dragon! Of course I should love this film! Because I love How to Train Your Dragon, right? Of course I need to cry when Hiccup and Toothless have to separate. I need to cry, right? Seriously, you guys, I was trying my hardest to shed a single tear. It was not happening. That tear was not leaving the station, I'm sorry. That's not to say I wasn't sad though. I was sad, but not really for the reason the movie wanted me to be. I don't know when exactly my opinion of this movie changed because it happened over time, but oh boy has it changed. I think it really started to solidify when I rewatched the first How to Train Your Dragon and suddenly saw all these differences. I was reminded of why I loved this film and what it originally was, and hey, wait a minute, what the hell happened to my boy Toothless? I started seeing why things were feeling off, and it started with the visuals because those are just the most obvious to me. After that, everything else started to unravel about this third movie too. Everything. It all made sense to me now. I'm just going to put it simply, How to Train Your Dragon 3 is not very good. I'll give it some points for some really pretty visuals and nice animation, but other than that, it tramples all over the previous films, erasing character development, the messages and themes. It's full of mischaracterization, bad design choices, and in general terrible writing. All for some cheap drama, attempting to pull at people's heartstrings, and because the director wanted an ending from a different story. The film is also rather sexist, ableist, and has some problematic morals, and some truly terrible comedy. Now this is all not to say that you can't enjoy this movie. You can. That's great if you enjoy it, but that doesn't mean you turn a blind eye to what it actually is. There are some actually harmful things in this movie that I will not let go overlooked. So, what is How to Train Your Dragon 3, The Hidden World, actually about? How to Train Your Dragon 3 is about Toothless and Hiccup learning to fly on their own, both metaphorically and literally. It's supposed to be the closing chapter of the How to Train Your Dragon series, where the two main characters separate forever to become who they were truly meant to be, because they need to now focus on their own people and then being together is not healthy or sustainable, according to this movie anyways. That's the bare basics of what it's about plot-wise, but first, I want to go through the personalities and design choices this movie made with its characters before I tackle the plot as a whole.
Another Night Fury.
Oh, not quite. It's more like a bright...
A Light Fury.
So I'm going to start this off by talking about probably the most talked about thing, or what seems to me is the most talked about thing with How to Train Your Dragon 3, and that is the Light Fury, or the Beluga Whale, as some people call it, the Sparkle Dragon. The dragon that lures Toothless back into the wild and away from the humans. The love interest, basically. Now, just like my original opinion of the movie, my original opinion of the Light Fury was also a positive one. She was my new favourite dragon. Oh, I loved her so much. She was pretty, I liked her abilities, her design was very nice, matching with the Hidden World aesthetic. I loved the way she moved. She was the Marshmallow Dragon. I also did fan art of her as well. Look, I just really liked her. I mean, look at the way she moves here. My love for the Light Fury, however, was very short-lived, and I soon discovered the real reason why I liked her, and it is quite sad actually, which I will get back to in the Toothless section. I followed a few art accounts that did a lot of fan art or redesigns for How to Train Your Dragon, and they pointed something out that I never noticed about the Light Fury's design. It's a subtle thing, but it opened the doors to what the intentions behind this design and character truly were. So you know what, I'm going to just show you guys actually. Hue and saturation, just change that a bit, up that. Do you see that? Let me just make it clearer. Witness me being too lazy to use my tablet right now, but these pink sparkly love hearts right here on the Light Fury's head was the eye-opener for me. That something about this wasn't quite right. I started to look into it, and lo and behold, the real intentions behind the character's design revealed itself. See, it's not so much the design I have an issue with, as much as it is the reason behind the design. And you don't actually have to dig that deep to see it. They literally stated in the official art book multiple times that the Light Fury's design was literally to just be an alluring lady dragon. So let me read you a couple quotes from the art book about the Light Fury. Dean insisted they were not the same species, which is very important to him, so he had to come up with an entirely new dragon. In general, it's more difficult to create a female character than it is to draw a male. For a female, any incorrect line and a shape can go wrong very quickly. We had to control all the shapes while keeping her both powerful and graceful so that she didn't fall too much in the reptilian category, like a lot of dragons. We wanted to explore how the Light Fury would walk and how to make her feel like a female, so we referenced lionesses and big cats. For Toothless, we looked at panthers, dogs, and bats for flying. She was not made to be a semi-aquatic dragon. I mean, she's never shown interacting with water apart from in the concept art, vaguely. She was not made to be a cave-dwelling type dragon. It doesn't say any of that. She was just meant to be an alluring lady dragon. Or barely a dragon at that, since she couldn't look too reptilian, apparently, because reptiles are for boys only, I guess. This is honestly disgusting, to put it lightly. I didn't even know how to react at first when I saw this. I was quite shocked, to say the least. It's just a bunch of very, very misogynistic design choices, making this character nothing more than an object. I mean, them saying it's more difficult to draw female characters, like, women are all the same, apparently? Because any incorrect line or shape will ruin everything? Women are always curvy, and any woman who doesn't look like a Barbie doll is wrong and ugly, and all women also move like cats. Females, they just walk different, it's natural to them. They're all like clones and just exist for straight men to objectify. Look guys, women aren't real. Okay, seriously though, I just can't get over this. I mean, if you search up the Light Fury on Google Images, you really don't have to go far to find some really weird, hypersexualized fan art of this joke of a dragon. I mean, yes, granted, people would do that anyway with everything, but this was the intention of her design. Search up Toothless and see how long it takes you to scroll to find sexualized stuff of him versus the Light Fury. I don't think it would even come up. The Light Fury's design is undeniably sexist. She's got soft, sparkly skin, tiny feet, almost no details, smooth edges, a small voice, she's smaller than Toothless, and she has the pink, sparkly love hearts on her head. Oh, and sometimes it really looks like they gave her eyeshadow. I must state as well that they literally said they wanted to be careful with the markings because they didn't want any of it to look like scarring. Because the dragon in the Viking theme movie, where all the other characters have some scarring, and she was captured by trappers, no less, cannot have scars. Because scars aren't attractive, so girls can't have them, obviously. I mean, to top that all off, when the general populace saw this film, most people straight up thought the Light Fury was just a female Night Fury instead of a different species or subspecies, which just made the whole thing so much worse. I mean, honestly, the movie never even explicitly says that the Light Fury is a subspecies. It just kind of alludes to it, which won't work. A lot of people I've talked to don't even know what a subspecies is, so I'm just So many people thought this was just a female Night Fury. I really don't blame them either, since literally the first time we see the Light Fury being referred to is by Grimmel saying this.
A female?
Now let me just clarify though, this isn't to say these traditionally feminine traits are always bad. I mean, I used to really like her. I used to defend her design to others by saying, well, she's clearly a cave dweller and semi-aquatic, but there is honestly nothing in the movie that proves that explanation. This is especially sad considering how the first film handled female characters. There was no, and never was, any sexual dimorphism in the dragons. These two dragons here, Stormfly and Meatlug, are female dragons. Notice that they look the same as their male counterparts and are just as rough and spiky as any other dragon. They didn't need pink sparkly love hearts or round soft edges to be female. The same can be said about the human characters too. The female characters were given as much detail as the male characters. They were treated with respect and they were treated as characters, not objects. And the argument of, oh, but how will kids understand that the Light Fury is a girl? Kids aren't that dumb. Also, why are you pushing these sexist and harmful beliefs on kids as well? Yikes. This goes alongside the, oh, but there were other Light Furies in the movie. The males probably look like that too. This does not excuse anything. The Light Fury is still designed with just female in mind and nothing else. Just because the Light Fury is a separate species, it doesn't mean it's not sexist anymore. Besides, these other Light Furies don't get any proper screen time to show us anything, their sex was not revealed, for all we know these could just be more female Light Furies anyways. Now, even if the Light Fury's design was actually somehow not sexist and all this stuff didn't happen, and she didn't have love hearts on her head, she does not fit the theme of the How to Train Your Dragon universe in the slightest anyway. I mean, look at this. What is this? You could make that same argument for Toothless. His design is also vastly different from the other dragons, and some of his earlier concept art was actually a lot closer to fitting the theme of the other dragons. But he's still got that rough look to him that helps him fit into the rest of the dragon cast. Also, he was kind of meant to stick out among the others, it seems, to have that contrast and also to make him adorable. The Light Fury, however, just doesn't look like she belongs in this universe anyway. The How to Train Your Dragon dragons are known to be rough, scaly, and spiky. Toothless at least has some of that down. The Light Fury has none of that. And man, I haven't even gotten into her personality yet, or lack thereof. Because oh boy, if you thought her design was problematic, it doesn't stop there. The Light Fury pretty much exists solely to please Toothless. She is barely given any development or screen time of her own and is mostly just pushed to the side. This is a 1 hour and 44 minute long movie and the Light Fury gets roughly 15 minutes of screen time. That's only about 14% of the entire movie. There are only a few parts where she does get some hints of personality, and I quite like these parts, despite their flaws. Like when she yoinks Hiccup off of Toothless, tossing him off into the sky and is all excited about it like she did a great job. Honestly, just yes, I like that. But those brief moments are very far and few between. For a character that we were supposed to love, she's barely given any development or time. By the end of the film, we still don't really know anything about her. She's still a stranger. This actually extends further than that too, because Toothless treats her the same way. He does not know anything about this dragon and he barely bonds with her, instead just trying to impress her. He is solely interested in her from her looks and the fact that she's another Fury. In saying that, let's talk about Toothless.
Toothless? I could have sworn you had... teeth.
The unholy offspring of lightning and death itself, and my favourite dragon from the first movie, right next to the Deadly Natter, Toothless. In the first film, he was a perfect balance of fearsome, adorable, and graceful. Who doesn't love this dragon? So I'm going to talk about Toothless from the first to the third movie for some context and how he changed, mostly design-wise first. In How to Train Your Dragon 1, Toothless is clearly very cat-like in nature. He's sleek, streamlined, and aerodynamic. His movements are fluid and graceful. Honestly, he's just very fun to watch. He's also very powerful, fast, and agile, which is especially seen whenever he takes flight. His strength was never strength. He's relatively small and low-lying compared to the other dragons. That's his thing. Toothless was apparently inspired by panthers, leopards, cats, and bats. Generally, he has lots of feline inspirations, and you can see it. Apparently some snake traits were thrown in as well. Also, not to mention that in Gift of the Night Fury, if you're unfamiliar with it, it was a Christmas special from 2011 that had no business being as good as it was. The animators literally used a cat for direct reference in one of the shots, sticking something to the end of the cat's tail to animate this part here. He was also not dark grey or black, but a very dark and desaturated blue, and he also had markings and patterns all over his body. In How to Train Your Dragon 2, some things changed about him. Some of them were okay, some of them not so much, but it wasn't terrible. I personally would have preferred if they just aged up How to Train Your Dragon 1 Toothless instead of changing his design, but again, it wasn't terrible. He got a little beefier, a little more square-like, lost a bit of that panther-like movement and sleekness, but still had that power and speed when he took flight. His markings were also faded a bit here and he became a little more grey looking. He started gaining some eyebrow-like things, but he also got a lot of personality in this film too. Very sarcastic and playful, which he did have in the first film already, just not to this extent. I did like that part. Notice as well though, his pupils are big and square-like much more frequently throughout this film, even in scenes that don't really make sense for it. Overall, however, this Toothless design sort of holds up, if you ignore some of the other stuff, which I'll get into later. Now, Toothless in the third film was nothing short of disappointing. He lost everything about him that made him that fast and powerful dragon, now becoming some bulky, blocky, square mess. Even his pupils became more rectangular. His face is all squished at the front with these massive eyebrows that move around like he's made of Play-Doh. He has this gigantic chest and this wide gait to him, no longer graceful or elegant. He moves awkwardly and it is no better when he's flying. He just looks very unappealing and not fun to watch at all. He also completely lost all his markings and his colours turned to this dull grey. He almost looks like a toy instead of an animal, which is ironic because in the art book they literally said they didn't want the Light Fury looking like a toy, but instead Toothless ended up looking more plastic-like than she did. I've heard some people try to excuse this lazy design choice as maybe Night Furies lose their markings as they age, but again, that's just an excuse. It doesn't say that anywhere, and even if it did, it just still looks like ass. Ironically, a lot of the original inspiration for Toothless was then shifted over to the Light Fury. She actually got a lot of that sleek, powerful grace. You can see it when she flies, when she dives and makes those quick turns. Though I shouldn't say power, she more so just got the sleekness. And we all know why that happened already. Because girl dragons can't be powerful. Even though they said they wanted her to be powerful, it pales in comparison to this. Though still, she has more than Toothless does in the third film. And in fact, that is why I originally liked the Light Fury. She was basically what Toothless once was, again without the power. I mean, she literally does the sleeping upside down thing like a bat that Toothless only did in the first film. It's why she was more appealing than Toothless for me, and it's why she became my new favourite. The Light Fury was closer to Toothless in movement than Toothless was. Again, the original inspiration for Toothless was cats, panthers, bats, and so on. Those animal inspirations were moved over to the Light Fury in the third film, and for Toothless, his animal inspirations suddenly switched to dogs and horses. Because folks, men, they can't be graceful or sleek. They must be big and bulky and strong. Toothless from the first film, guys, that wasn't Toothless. That was a female Night Fury, actually, who posed as Toothless. No male character can look like this. That's impossible. I actually can't handle this, guys. My brain is actively withering away thinking about this. And actually, you know what? Anyone remember that arcade fighting How to Train Your Dragon game from, 2010? Yeah, I played this game way too much back then, but do me a favor and look at the Night Furies in this thing. See, they keep the general shapes of them here, with the shovel-shaped head? Yeah, look at this little dude go. Look at how fast and swift he is. Yeah, I'd like to see this motherfucker do that. I don't think so. Oh yeah, and hold up a minute. Let's just go back for a second. Did you see that? See, the default colour for the Night Fury was actually a bluish colour. It's literally right there. Even the game did the colours right. Yes, they missed his markings, but it is a Wii game from 2010, so... Back to the main point of changing Toothless's entire look and feel though. I've heard arguments like, oh, it's to contrast the Light Fury, or to show how Toothless has forgotten what being a dragon is, but that doesn't justify changing his entire design. By the end of the film, Toothless does not gain this power or grace back because his design does no favours for that. He's still the bulky horse dog mess. Even if they wanted to pull this Toothless is clumsy now thing, they could have still made him clumsy and not so graceful without jeopardizing his entire design and destroying what a Night Fury is, what Toothless is. Toothless did not just grow older, his design changed, his entire body structure, his face, it all changed and morphed into something else so drastically different from what he originally was meant to be. His markings disappeared, his scales changed colour. This is not the same dragon, not even close. I unfortunately can't find the source of this anymore, so take this with a grain of salt, but I remember seeing that even with the courtship scene, when it was given to the animators, they struggled to make Toothless move in the way that they wanted. So they had to change his entire body structure, his model, so he could make these movements. It was in an interview somewhere with one of the animators. Besides all this, I'm more convinced they did this just for the sake of cuteness and marketing Toothless as the funny dog dragon. Remember I brought up how in the second film Toothless's eyes were bigger and more square-like more often? This movie takes that even further. It's clear to me that Toothless became nothing more than a marketing gimmick, and honestly they really failed at that anyway. I mean, how exactly is this supposed to be cute? Especially compared to this. Basically, don't fix it if it ain't broke. Original Toothless was adorable enough already, but could also be scary if you wanted. Look at this. Now look at this. Even his teeth got more rounded and soft looking. Another issue that arose as early as the second movie with Toothless was the idea of the most powerful, and the whole alpha concept, which is ironic when you also pair it with how they tried to make Toothless more cute and goofy, and honestly a straight up moron in the third. In the second film, Toothless got a couple new abilities, also abilities he didn't know he had. Number 1, the back spikes that can split, and number 2, turning into a mini Godzilla. There's a few reasons I really don't like either of these things, but let's skip to the main point first. Toothless was never meant to be the most powerful dragon. In the first film, he's only the most feared because nobody had actually seen a Night Fury up close before, and they were extremely rare. It's a fear of the unknown. They're extremely elusive, fast, agile, sneaky, and seemingly nocturnal, or at least they just attack at night to hide amongst the night sky, which adds another layer of fear. If you actually look at him, Toothless is quite small compared to the other dragons. Even the Monstrous Nightmare had a fair go at him. So yeah, this whole alpha idea brought into the second film really just irked me. The split spine ability was okay, though not really needed. I get that it was to help Toothless turn better when Hiccup wasn't on him, but really, it was just the first hint to me of where they were heading with Toothless as a character. Adding abilities to him to make him more and more powerful and cool was ironically what took more away from his character than it added. It lost what he was originally meant to be. Toothless was already interesting enough as it was. Even if we're just talking about designs, I honestly just think Alpha Toothless looks really silly anyway. It doesn't even match the colour of his plasma blasts, which are more of a purple colour, by the way. But anyways, okay, I know why they did this. Besides wanting to add more and more to Toothless to get more cool points instead of caring about making him an interesting character, which again he already was, so I don't even know where they were going with that one. I mean, this wasn't a subtle thing the movie did. Obviously, since this film was about Hiccup having to take on the role of chieftain in his tribe, Toothless became the alpha of Berk's dragons to kind of symbolise that too. I mean, it was a nice little narrative choice, having Toothless become the alpha of Berk's dragons after seeing him get the ball rolling on forcing the Bewilderbeast and Drago to leave. It would have been fine if he was just considered the chief of Berk's dragons the same way that Hiccup was considered chief of Berk, but it wasn't that way. Toothless was considered the literal alpha of the dragons, got glowing abilities, and took the place of the Bewilderbeast instead. It's not cool symbolism if it doesn't make sense and takes away from Toothless as a character. And I do mean it when I say it doesn't make sense. The second movie brought in the idea of this alpha dragon, where it can literally mind control other dragons, except for the fact that this movie didn't bring this idea in. It was already a pre-established thing in the first film, it just wasn't so explicit. There already was an alpha dragon, and that was the Green Death, the dragon that Hiccup and Toothless fight at the end of the first film. The Green Death could also control dragons. Notice as well they use the same sound effect when the alpha mind controls them.
Kill a dragon.
Don't remind me. Toothless?
Funnily enough though, when Toothless and Hiccup challenge the alpha, aka the Green Death, and actually end up killing it, no, not just blowing its tusk off and making it run away, no, Hiccup and Toothless kill the alpha on their own. By that logic, Toothless, and Hiccup I guess, should have become the alpha of all dragons, though they didn't. Seems as if it was just a half-assed rush plot point to shove in so they could make Toothless more powerful. Hiccup and Toothless already killed the alpha dragon.
So, does that disqualify him, or...?
It is a very fun and powerful scene, don't get me wrong, like the scene itself is fine, and it was really cool to see all the dragons team up and tell this Bewilderbeast to get lost, but they really could have done without Toothless glowing. And please, before I go on, don't confuse all this for me not liking the second film or something. I actually really like it. Also, it introduced one of my favourite characters. The only thing I don't like about it are a couple design choices, what they did with some of the side characters, and Alpha Mode Toothless. But other than that, I think the second movie is pretty good. This is more just so a build-up to what's to come for the third film, and speaking of, this is where stuff gets really messy. In the third film, Toothless not only has the splitting spines and Alpha Mode, which is now cranked up to 1000, but he can now conduct lightning at will and turn invisible. Now let me ask you, why does a dragon, who already camouflages super well at night, need an ability that lets him turn invisible? It also just made the Light Fury's ability to turn invisible less unique and interesting, now that Toothless, who can already conduct lightning now, shoot powerful plasma blasts, and turn alpha, can also turn invisible. All the Light Fury has is invisibility and plasma blasts. Fantastic. The invisibility thing was actually a very nice detail that also made sense with her reflective scales. It was cool, but now Toothless has it too, so much for making the Light Fury more unique. Also, in saying that, Toothless doesn't have reflective scales, so this ability for him really makes no sense. There was a deleted scene in How to Train Your Dragon 3 that actually alluded to her reflective scales, which is a real shame it was cut, because it's a rather decent scene for the most part and gave the Light Fury a little more screen time. Plus more for her to connect with Toothless. Toothless's lightning abilities are also overpowered and simply unneeded. The whole idea of unholy offspring of lightning and death itself was not meant to be literal. You could even take it as in the first scene we see the Night Fury, their fire or plasma blasts are like lightning and thunder.
Get down!
But of course, we can't have subtlety in this film. Toothless's Alpha Mode is also now in full swing. They could have just reeled it back a bit here and have Toothless just vaguely be considered the alpha of Berk's dragons, who he doesn't have control over but they respect, similar to Hiccup being chief. But no, in the third film he can control all dragons, even ones that he's never met before. Which might I remind you, the only reason Toothless was considered an alpha was because the dragons of Berk saw him challenge the Bewilderbeast. No other dragon saw that, and therefore has no reason to obey him. Toothless isn't an alpha species. I will bring it back to my main point though. Toothless is not the most powerful and strong dragon that can beat all others, and he isn't a king either. He is just elusive, rare, arguably the most intelligent of the dragons, and his speed and agility are his strong points. Adding all these new abilities in each film was unnecessary and honestly kind of lame, and it extends to the reason why no other Night Furies were ever shown, because then Toothless wouldn't be as special anymore. He has to be the only one, even though it was probably the thing so many people were excited for. I remember watching Gift of the Night Fury back when I was 10 and being disappointed that I didn't see any baby Night Furies, or just more Night Furies for that matter. Though I shrugged it off and thought, oh well, it is a Christmas special, maybe if they do more movies it'll be in those. Nope. Toothless had to be the only one. Congratulations DreamWorks, you killed off an entire species. And no, the Light Fury does not count. She is not the same species, and the kids they have will not be pure Night Furies. The kids they have will be with other Light Furies because all Night Furies are dead, I guess. By the 4th or 5th generation, these Furies will be almost devoid of all Night Fury genes. So yeah, there's no way this thing isn't inbred. There was also some foreshadowing of there being more Night Furies in the second film in a line of dialogue from Hiccup at the beginning.
You might find a few timberjacks in those woods, the odd whispering death or two in the rocks. Who knows? Maybe we'll finally track down another Night Fury. Wouldn't that be something?
I guess that doesn't matter now. All of this because Toothless has to be the most strong and powerful and special dragon there ever is. So, let's move on to Toothless's personality in the third film. Okay, I'm going to draw a direct comparison between second movie Toothless and third movie Toothless, with a scene from both films that are very similar in a lot of ways. Both films feature a short segment at the beginning, or near the beginning, where Hiccup is alone with Toothless on a small cliffside area. In both scenes, Hiccup is working on his map, and Astrid shows up halfway through to remind Hiccup of his responsibilities. In the second film, Toothless and Hiccup crash land there after Hiccup attempts this new trick he's been working on. Toothless gets annoyed with him and his recklessness and mocks him a bit. They have some playful back and forths, and then we have Hiccup taking out his map that he's been working on. Toothless watches, sitting down next to him. He engages in it, helping Hiccup make it, also glue the pieces together, and just in general, respecting what it means to Hiccup and engaging in what he's talking about. Then Astrid shows up and Toothless starts playing with Stormfly in the background. In the third movie, Hiccup also has his map out, working on it, and instead of Toothless engaging in it, or even respecting it at all, he is drooling on it and playing with Hiccup's prosthetic leg, like some kind of untrained dog. No respect for Hiccup, no understanding of what the prosthetic leg is, and no respect for his personal items or what he cares about either. There's no back and forth between the two. Toothless is reduced to some sort of mindless pet, and then shortly after he runs off without notice, motioning absolutely nothing to his best friend about where he is going. What a contrast. Toothless, by the third movie, is just this cute and goofy, dumb dog character. He had a bit of that in How to Train Your Dragon 2, but it wasn't too bad. Now this movie, he's literally just there to promote How to Train Your Dragon. He's the marketable plush toy thing, the funny dog sidekick, no longer a character, diminished to the squishy cute dragon thing that's always jumping around excitedly, drooling everywhere with barely any self-awareness. Which is ironic because I've seen some people call this film the film for Toothless, the one that focused on him as a character more, which... I mean, look at this promotional material. What is that? He has, like, boobs. Those aren't edited. That's just what he looks like. It's like a mutant pug thing. Please just put it out of its misery. Ironic that this was supposed to be a film that showed he was ready to lead his own people. I've seen some people say Toothless acts this way because he's an animal. Okay, but he's not a dumbass, and he wasn't like this before. Toothless and Night Furies in general have not only been shown to be some of the most intelligent of dragons, but dragons in general have been shown to have intelligence comparable to humans. In How to Train Your Dragon 1, Toothless even understands when other characters apologize and what the meaning behind it is. Not only does Toothless get reduced to this dumb, horny dog thing, but he has absolutely no regard for others in this film, let alone his best friend. Toothless regularly disregards Hiccup, or even endangers him at times. As I mentioned before, he treats Hiccup's prosthetic leg as a chew toy, drools all over his stuff, he barely shows any concern or care when the Light Fury almost kills Hiccup and Astrid, or when the Light Fury throws Hiccup off of Toothless. He just shrugs it off and acts like having Hiccup there with him was actually a burden. And during the ending, Toothless performs his newfound electricity abilities while Hiccup is on him, showing that Toothless is willing to hurt Hiccup, his best friend, for his own sake, or for the sake of his girlfriend he literally just met. In fact, Toothless is willing to hurt all his friends and family, all the dragons, for this lady dragon. If anything, I actually felt sorry for Hiccup in this film. Everyone else around him was just being really horrible, actually, which I will get more into later. And you cannot tell me that Toothless is treating Hiccup this way after the 2 movies previous. This is Toothless only weeks after knowing him, hearing that he might be in danger. This is Toothless protecting Hiccup from a monstrous nightmare. This is Toothless saving him at the end of the Green Death battle. This is Toothless breaking out of ice, going alpha mode and challenging a behemoth to protect Hiccup. Yeah, this doesn't really add up. And did I mention the really sad part is that Toothless in this third film is basically a misogynist? When you have the female character that lures one of the lead male characters being this shallow, no personality, hypersexualized mess of a thing, you end up having the male character appearing just as shallow. Toothless spends the entire movie going after this lady dragon he just met. He is a horny mess. He does not bother to actually get to know her, and there are like 0 moments of them actually bonding or having any fun back and forth interactions. Most of it is just Toothless trying to get into the Light Fury's pants by impressing her. The Light Fury, of course, is no better. She doesn't try to get to know Toothless either, only showing interest in him when he does something impressive, basically when he shows off his muscles. There is one scene where the Light Fury is impressed by his art, but that's arguably still just showing off skills rather than connecting over anything. In fact, the Light Fury could easily be seen as straight up toxic, since she forces Toothless to ditch all his friends and, dare I say, family, just because she doesn't like them. I feel nothing for these characters' relationship other than the black and white aesthetic looks pretty, I guess. They honestly don't seem to care about each other beyond procreating. The only scene that shows a bit of playfulness between them is the very brief rough and tumble they have in the field, and maybe this scene? That's pretty much it. There was actually a deleted scene where Toothless and the Light Fury have a playful flight, which would have added some flavour, but that of course was cut. Honestly, Toothless has a more fleshed out and cute dynamic with Stormfly than he does with the Light Fury. So that was the two Furies of the film, the two main dragons, but they're not the only characters in this film that suffer the fate of bad writing and design. Not by a long shot. One thing that was nice in these films that not many other animated films do was let their characters actually age up with the movies. It was nice, but something to me felt kind of off about it. Specifically Hiccup. He suddenly had this chiseled jaw and perfect face, and by the third film, his freckles were also completely faded. He just reminded me of a Barbie doll or something, especially with the way they revealed his face at the start of the second film. It came off as like, look at how sexy Hiccup is now or something, which just really annoyed me. This isn't to say when people age this stuff can't happen, it just seems awfully convenient. I unfortunately can't find it anymore, but there was an edit I saw on Instagram of an alternate version of aged up Hiccup that kept him looking true to what he was. It was honestly really good and just in general looked a lot better and more believable. It also did not fade out his freckles, important detail there folks. Though overall in the second film it wasn't too bad. Like, it's definitely not ugly or anything, oh my, no. It's just disappointing. Where it really got bad, however, was the third film. Luckily, the characters' faces and bodies didn't become disfigured like poor Toothless, but any sign of freckles, dirt, marks, any imperfections on the character's skin is gone. At least on the main characters. They keep it in some of the side characters because they're allowed to be ugly, right? And I don't just mean that for the human characters either. We already talked about Toothless losing his markings, but he also lost other details like having dirt in between his scales in the first film. He is completely devoid of it by the second and most definitely the third. It's all completely clean, untouched baby skin. Or more like greasy plastic. Ironic for characters who are meant to be rough, hardy Vikings. Look at the freckles all over Hiccup's hands here as well, from the first film. Now look at his hands by the third film. All gone. Are freckles not pretty enough for you guys? Are they too dorky or something? Do you want to tell that to anyone in real life who actually has freckles? Yeah, that's a really nice opinion you have there, DreamWorks. This isn't a one-time thing either. It's been a common trend I've seen amongst animated movies these days. First thing that comes to mind is the Croods. In the first film, these characters have many details on their skin, including dirt marks, which makes sense, they're cavemen. By the second film, that is all gone, and the saturation of the entire thing is turned up tenfold. Luckily, How to Train Your Dragon didn't suffer quite as much as that did, but it still is quite sad. Not only this, but the lack of detail and care like this extends to other things as well. In the first film, and in Gift of the Night Fury as well, each dragon, regardless of species, was often given a slightly different appearance. Not all the deadly natters are blue like Stormfly, and they even have different body shapes. I mean, look at this Zibble back here. There is some variation with the dragons in the third and second film, but it pales in comparison to the first. And one more quick note on this topic, but the direction the third film went with clothing as well was really eh. I mean, seriously, they all look like toys here with their armor that matches the dragons. What happened to all the neat clothing from the previous films? Why do they have to make them look like figurines now? Is it to sell toys? Because I honestly wouldn't be surprised. Now, one last thing before I move on to the big topics, I want to also talk about the other characters and their role in the film. And also the comedy. And I say comedy with big quotation marks. You remember when I said that everyone else in this film kinda sucks? Yeah, back on that. I've heard a few times now that people don't like the other Viking teens in the first film and find them kind of annoying. I get that, but I also personally disagree. I didn't mind them. I thought they were decently funny and did what they needed to do as side characters. They could have been better, but they weren't bad by a long shot. I specifically like the twins, honestly.
My shield.
There's like a million shields!
Take that one. It has flour on it. Girls like flowers.
Oops, now this one has blood on it.
And I am not happy about how they were treated in the second and third film. So, as is the case with many franchises, as the series continues, a lot of characters, due to the people behind these not caring at all, turn into caricatures of themselves, getting dumbed down to insane levels and acting completely out of character, or just being thrown to the wayside. All of the characters by the third film were affected by this in some way, as I've already discussed with Toothless for instance, and the Viking kids here are no exception to this. In How to Train Your Dragon 3, and honestly How to Train Your Dragon 2 as well at some points, they are actually painful to sit through watching. They're all incredibly stupid, barely used, and honestly giant assholes as well. Maybe save for this guy who gets like 0 screen time. And of course, this is all played off as comedy. You really don't have to look further than the fact that one of them creepily starts hitting on Hiccup's mum, Valka, as some running joke throughout the film.
Yeah, your mom's super impressed with me. I'm like the son she always wanted.
Who, by the way, is barely used much as it is, and nobody pulls him up for it. In fact, Velka even plays into it by the end. There's also this joke.
Who died and made you chief? What? Ow!
Cause yeah, in case anyone is watching this that has not actually seen the second film for some reason, Hiccup's dad died in that. This same character cried at his funeral. And there's also this gem as well.
Listen, I've been watching you walk. Lose the limp. No one's gonna marry that.
I have a prosthetic leg.
So have I. And I have a parasitic twin, but you don't see me limping around about it. Come on. Chin up, Hickey. Puff out that chest. Move that.
Part of me feels like that alone is the worst joke in the film. This guy is canonically ableist, guys. You just told your friend who has a prosthetic leg to stop limping because it's unattractive. Yeah, hilarious. Comedy gold right there. Everybody laugh at how dumb this character is. Like, yeah, I guess the characters pointed out that it was a stupid thing to say, but why write it in then? Is that seriously the best idea you guys had for this character? To use him for this? Look, you know when the comedy for a film is brought down to mocking other characters for their disabilities or in general appearance, that this thing is beyond the point of saving. In fact, this film is riddled with characters making fun of other characters, mostly Hiccup's, appearance, or straight up just bullying in general. The other very insufferable scene that comes to mind, besides Tough Nut's pep talks and this guy, includes the other twin, Rough Nut. Previous to writing this, I actually had no idea which name belonged to which. Yes, I know I said I particularly like these characters, but it's fine. So there's a scene where Rough Nut is captured by the villain Grimmel. She's trapped in a cell and she starts talking. A lot. One of the things she does is make fun of the other characters' designs. Is it meant to be like a fourth wall break or something? None of what she says is really funny, it's just side character being really stupid again. This is the one character I connect with here. I feel his pain. Please just let it end. Make the credits roll, please. Now I get that comedy is subjective. Some people might have found that funny, and that's fine. But my issue with it is the fact that they just dumb the characters down to do this. That's it. They didn't actually use them properly. They just went, haha, they're really stupid. Isn't that funny? Not to mention that this dumbass then gets let free because she's so annoying and then proceeds to not realize that she's leading the villains back to Hiccup and friends. It is just astounding to me. I can kind of see that she maybe intentionally annoyed Grimmel until he let her go, but honestly it could still be read the other way.
Can't we just feed her to your dragons? Hey, what do you have to eat around here? I'm allergic to fish, you should know that. That's all they have at that stupid new island. Do you have any...
Because the fact that she was written to be too stupid to even realize she could have been followed speaks volumes.
I annoyed them till they let me go.
Wait. Grimmel let you go.
So dumb. See, everyone thinks Tough Nut's more annoying, but hold on.
Rough Nut, focus. Were you followed?
I never look back, Hiccup.
It actually would have been kind of funny if she annoyed him on purpose like that, and was aware of it, and maybe didn't let her go or lead the villains back, but that didn't happen. The icing on the cake, however, was her brother having no idea she was missing on the way back. And I don't care if you point it out, film, it's still stupid. Yes, these characters seemed kind of airheaded-ish at times in the first film, but key point there, seemed. Honestly, looking back at it, they were never stupid. They were just immature, rowdy teenagers. In the first film, and even in Gift of the Night Fury, they have a lot more nuance despite the limited screen time they get. They actually have some back and forths with each other that normal people would have. They are actually funny without being completely brainless. It would have been nice actually to explore them a little more as characters and develop them rather than turn them into these bumbling, insufferable morons that only hinder the main character's progress. They just took their immaturity and swapped it out for actual incompetence. I understand you only have a set amount of time in a movie, so giving attention to every character is hard, but at least the little attention you give them, don't turn them into these rocks for brains side characters just for the sake of this really cheap and honestly harmful comedy. Of course, they also had to throw in the fat character is fat joke as well.
Could've used some Proclo. I should've skipped breakfast.
I mean, I will give this film a little bit of credit because personally I didn't think all the jokes were bad. Some of them were okay. As in, like, I can count them on, like, one hand. Like, as in 2 of them. I thought the joke about the twin knowing that the world was round was kind of funny. And this as well, honestly.
No running on the deck! Slippery. You could fall.
But it's really not enough to save the rest of it. Literally all they get these side characters to do beyond the first film is have really insufferable romance drama to the point of ignoring other characters sometimes and not caring about the plot. There's like one line from Tough Nut in the second film that suggested he wasn't completely brain dead in response to this guy being annoying with his sister and flirting with her, and that was kind of it. This is the only nice characterization I get from this dude in the second film, and I am clinging onto it. Okay, so this is something I realized while editing this, and I'm just gonna add it in. Because, oh my. So by the second movie, Rough Nut here, clearly they made her kind of unattractive. Her voice sounds more annoying. She kind of looks a little different. She's stupid, as we've discussed. And like, I don't see Astrid wearing those. So one of the other reasons I stopped playing the romance thing is because it's funny that such an ugly woman like Rough Nut is wanting to be in a romantic relationship. Isn't that so funny? Because she's ugly. Isn't she so ugly? They did this on purpose. This is horrible. To top that all off, in the second film, the group works better as a team than they ever do by the third. They even work better in the second. In the third film, they are absolutely useless and it's played off as, again, comedic. At the end of the movie, they kind of come together, but it's null and void if you think about the fact that they kind of could already do that. And again, better by the end of the first film. And this is not to mention that they barely even used some of the characters, like Velka, at all. She was just used for this god-awful joke and as an extra to being the giving shitty advice crew. Members being Velka now and Astrid. Because yeah, also that's all Astrid is now. Because I don't know guys, she did a pep talk thing in the first and second movie one time, so like, that's all she is by the third. She gives bad, sometimes hurtful advice because the plot requires her to, and then she gets yoinked off screen because that's done now. Bye. Astrid also has this line, which is hilarious.
No, nothing. I'm impressed. I mean, look at you. Embracing change. I am proud of you.
Like, honey, are you forgetting who you're talking to here? The man who caused all the change in this village? This dude is the symbol of change. He is the reason dragons and humans have made peace in this village. He's the only guy here who is trying to change stuff for the better. All you nerds are reluctant and making fun of him. What is going on? What are you saying?
Dragon scales! Dragons shed a lot. Oh, I know a demon when I see one. No human legs on that skinny.
Yeah, your mom's super impressed with me. I'm like the son she always wanted.
Seriously. And abandon our home of 7 generations? The home your father left you to protect. Yeah, I think we need a real solution, Hiccup.
Bud. Yeah, sure, don't bother to wait for us.
Now, I've seen the way Astrid looks at you. Everyone has that doubt, that not so subtle disappointment, that longing for something more than you. You need to focus on being worthy. I mean, she's a warrior queen for Thor's sake, and you are neither. Show these naysayers, of which there are many, that you're more than just a malnourished runt with bad hair, strange teeth, and a twig for a neck.
You're really bad at pep talks.
You need to man up.
Chief Hiccup. Do I say Chief Hiccup? Or do I call you Hiccup? What do you prefer?
I said make camp. Did you see them? Not build a new village. Who died and made you chief?
Now about that voice. Can we lose the whole honking goose thing? It's hard to imagine wedded bliss with that going off every minute.
Do you still think I'm crazy, or?
Let's just say this whole idea is very you.
What?
No, nothing. I'm impressed. I mean, look at you. Embracing change. I am proud of you.
Listen, I've been watching you walk. Lose the limp. No one's gonna marry that.
Toothless and I will fight.
Toothless has the light fury now. He's probably not even coming back.
What?
You gave him his freedom, Hiccup. What were you expecting? Now that's a king.
We'll find a way to man. Don't say it.
I wasn't going to.
I shouldn't have dragged you out there. He wouldn't have flown me back. She wouldn't have followed.
Yep. Get on.
What?
We're going to find him.
Really? I feel like the same screw-up I was before I met Toothless.
I can see that.
I'm coming, Toothless!
You still think he cares about you?
What are you doing?
Oh yeah, and one more thing. Grimmel saying Night Furies can't survive in the cold is honestly hilarious. Did you guys not watch any of the other movies? Now, before I start talking about the plot of How to Train Your Dragon 3 and its flaws, I want to quickly explain the first two films and their themes to give some more context. In How to Train Your Dragon 1, Berk and dragons are basically at war, as the dragons frequently attack their village and steal their food. Hiccup, a smaller-looking Viking teen who is also the son of Stoic, the chief, wants to fit in with the rest of his peers and do what they do, join the war fighting the dragons, but is denied by others around him as he doesn't seem capable of actually doing so. To try and prove himself, Hiccup attempts to capture the elusive Night Fury, which is considered to be one of the most dangerous types of dragons. By luck really, he manages to shoot one down, but he finds himself to be not so much of the dragon-killing material he thought he could be. He lets the Night Fury go, but having shot it down caused it to have half of its tail fan ripped off, so it finds itself trapped in a small belly, being unable to fly. Hiccup, instead of killing the dragon, tries to nurse it back to health and ends up slowly befriending it. In the process of befriending this Night Fury, which he names Toothless, Hiccup slowly learns that dragons aren't actually the vicious beasts that everyone in the rest of his village believes they are to be. Of course though, Hiccup has to keep his friendship with Toothless a secret, since the rest of his village would view it as unnatural and wrong. However, eventually, they find out about it when Toothless comes and saves Hiccup from a startled monstrous nightmare. With Hiccup's newfound knowledge of the dragons, he then accidentally tells Stoic about the dragon's nest, which he found earlier via Toothless. Stoic doesn't listen to Hiccup's warning about the dangers of the nest, and uses Toothless to find it, where they then find the Green Death, the queen dragon that Hiccup warned him about. This queen dragon controls all the dragons in this nest, and constantly demands food from them via any means necessary, which is why they've been raiding Berk for so long. If they don't gather enough food, we're shown that they'll be eaten themselves. So, as much of Berk is now stranded on this island with the Green Death, Hiccup and friends come to their aid, riding dragons, to defeat the queen and free the dragons that she once controlled. Through working together, they are able to overcome the laws this world has set for them and rise beyond it, achieving peace for dragons and humans on Berk, creating a better world for both groups. In How to Train Your Dragon 2, these same themes of being stronger together are reinforced. The main villain of this film is a dragon trapper by the name of Drago Bloodfist. Yes, that's his name, it's not spelt the way you think it is. Who has managed to take control of an alpha dragon and is using it to mind control other dragons and create a dragon army. Drago's Bewilderbeast freezes Hiccup and Toothless in an icy tomb at the end of the film, but due to their intensely strong bond, Toothless breaks out of the ice, going alpha mode and challenging the Bewilderbeast to protect Hiccup. We also have this powerful scene before this where Hiccup helps Toothless break the mind control the alpha has over him because again, their friendship is just that powerful, showing to Drago that no matter how much control you have over these dragons, over people, nothing beats a true bond like this. Through the friendship humans and dragons have, they were able to defeat Drago and his Bewilderbeast. The power of friendship, as corny as that sounds, remains as How to Train Your Dragon's main and center theme. Hiccup and Toothless's bond is pretty much the cornerstone of the entire franchise. Then in the third movie, Toothless takes the first chance he gets to leave Hiccup behind forever, just for this girl dragon he only just met. He leaves his best friend, Hiccup, forever. You know, only the person who he risked his own life to save and protect multiple times throughout the first two films. Because he wants to bang. Yeah, so much for the themes of teamwork, unity, and friendship. So, with that, it leads us to the ending of the third film, the separation between Hiccup and Toothless, and by extension, all dragons and humans. The big thing that everyone talks about that isn't the Night Fury. Let's get into this.
The slipping on the ice thing is actually, there's a little bit more to it than that. It's kind of a subtle thing, but the idea is when he comes out in the morning and he slips on the ice, it's a cute moment for him to slip and Toothless catches him like, "I've got you, buddy." That's the top layer of that thing. But underneath that, he slips with his prosthetic leg and Toothless catches him, and it's a slight, subtle reinforcement of the notion that they really need one another. They're not whole unless they're together. So when Toothless is gone, he comes out and he slips on that same patch of ice and falls on his back.
Besides Toothless being a terrible friend and a horny mess, why did it need to happen? What drove the characters to this decision? Well, this movie gave us this new villain, Grimmel, who was supposed to be like the corruption arc version of Hiccup, the what if Hiccup did kill Toothless scenario.
Well, unlike you, when I was a boy and I came upon a Night Fury, I killed it where it slept.
He believes that what Hiccup wants, a utopia for dragons and humans to live together, is foolish. Grimmel also claims that he is the Night Fury killer and was the one who hunted the Night Furies to near, or well, basically extinction. He was portrayed to be this insanely powerful and deadly threat that even when defeated implied that people would never stop coming after the dragons, and so forced the characters to turn to their last resort, separating from the dragons and hiding them away in order to keep them safe. Except there's just one little problem with that thing. The threat in the third film has absolutely nothing on the threats in the movies previous. In How to Train Your Dragon 2, the main villain, Drago Bloodfist, was so much more dangerous. He had a fleet equal to, or even larger than, the size of the one that Grimmel had. And Drago had a dragon the size of a mountain that could brainwash other dragons just by looking at them. He was creating a dragon army. He was also insane. Not only that, but Velka's alpha dragon was killed, their home, Berk, was almost entirely destroyed, and Hiccup had to witness his best friend Toothless be mind-controlled to kill him and then accidentally murder his dad. Now what was the response from Hiccup and friends, or the entirety of Berk for that matter? To give up? To ditch the dragons? Make them go into hiding forever? Absolutely not. Not only did this threat not make them give up, but after they defeated the villain, it actually made them even more determined.
This is Berk. A bit trampled and busted and covered in ice, but it's home. It's our home. Those who attacked us are relentless and crazy. But those who stopped them? Oh, even more so. We may be small in numbers, but we stand for something bigger than anything the world can pit against us. We are the voice of peace, and bit by bit, we will change this world. You see, we have something they don't. Oh sure, they have armies, and they have armadas, but we have our dragons!
That is the final speech from Hiccup at the end of the second film. Their determination and friendship between dragons and humans seems almost unshakable now. So, what? Some guy who claimed to kill all Night Furies in the third film is the final straw? That's it? New Berk is fine by the end of the film. No one was killed. Everyone is A-OK and Grimmel is defeated. Yet Hiccup's determination has all but vanished. Everything he's been working towards for years, he just gives it all up. The ending of the final film is just very anticlimactic and does not show at all any raising of stakes from the films previous. It barely even touches the stakes of the first film. The only thing it demonstrates is the hero giving up after facing a villain far weaker than the ones he's faced previously. In fact, with Toothless becoming a dragon of godlike power now, if anything, the stakes have been lowered even more. They have faced far greater threats before, and with the help from dragons, teamwork, they were able to overcome all of them. Thanks to the bond between dragons and humans, Berk has prospered and become victorious against anything thrown at it. So why are they throwing all that away?
You wish dragons to live free among us, like equals? A toxic notion, my boy.
Grimmel wins before the film even begins. He's the man who apparently, single-handedly, made an entire species, the Night Furies, go extinct. He finds there's one left, and, well, to be honest, he wouldn't even have to do anything and he'd win. He could just wait it out. Toothless just needs to die and that's it. Night Furies extinct. But, thanks to poor writing, Grimmel actually achieved above and beyond what he ever imagined. He just wanted the Night Furies gone and dragons to not coexist with humans. But now, all the dragons are gone, for thousands of years. Apparently How to Train Your Dragon takes place in the real world, and is supposed to be an explanation for why dragons don't exist today. I'll get into why that's a thing later. So, just to recap, the main villain, Grimmel, stuck by his beliefs until the very end, accomplished the one thing he set out to do, and thanks to his sacrifice, he ensured that the vision he had for the world would be realized forever. On the other hand, the protagonist, Hiccup, broke every single belief he had, failed in his vision, gave up, accomplished nothing, lost his best friend, and as a result of his decision, condemned humanity to a future without dragons, and reset the friendship he fought to create if dragons would ever come back. They will have to go through the entire process of learning each side isn't so bad after all, again. Everything he'd been working for all these years, gone. Now everyone will forget dragons ever existed. I mean, talk about how depressing this is. Grimmel ripping apart Hiccup's tech, just symbolizing his dreams will never come to fruition. This isn't a bittersweet ending, this is a tragedy. And it barely makes sense. Not only do all dragons and humans have to lose their friends and separate for what seems to be forever, but it is shown multiple times throughout the first and second film that dragons and humans are stronger together. Through teamwork, they were able to achieve things they never thought they could. That's the literal theme of the first two films. Only through working together could they defeat the Green Death, overcome mind control, destroy Drago's army, defeat Grimmel, and even minor things like, I don't know, providing dragons with dental care, food, shelter, protection, and the dragons providing the Berkians with protection as well, and a means of transport far exceeding anything they had before, allowing them to explore places they could normally never dream of. Besides, how does shoving all your problems in a hole fix anything, exactly? You can't just hide it away and hope it'll just fix itself. If anything, it just makes it worse. I mean, this epilogue at the end of the film apparently takes place only a decade or so after the events of How to Train Your Dragon 3, and Hiccup states here that dragons have become something of legend already. Now, how exactly are people meant to learn to coexist with dragons when the time is right if they don't even know they exist in the first place? There's also the very simple issue of Toothless's prosthetic just not lasting. He can't take it off, which would lead to infections and just... I'm serious, this is bad. He also can't repair it if it gets damaged, it will wear down over time anyway, and it's not like some magical fix either. Toothless would still have very limited mobility, because the auto tail just mirrors exactly what his normal tail does. But of course the film just insists on the idea that with the auto tail, Toothless is just not disabled anymore. And as a quick side note as well, my gosh, those poor Death Grippers were really done dirty. The film suggests that dragons are intelligent animals, but for some reason they played off these Death Grippers as inherently evil and consequently, none of them were saved. Despite the poor things being drugged, they still insisted on this. It even said it in the art book that they were just evil dragons. You cannot just call an entire species evil. That doesn't even make sense. And honestly also goes against the messages of the first two films as well. This is a common trend amongst this third film if you haven't noticed. The idea that the dragons were vicious beasts was a stereotype. It was constantly shown to us that it simply wasn't true, that dragons were actually gentle creatures if given the chance, but not the Death Grippers, for some reason. This is especially silly considering it would have been very easy to just take the drugged vials off their heads, by the way, as we saw for the Light Fury. Far easier than in the second film where dragons were being mind controlled by a behemoth. Now, one of the ways this film tried to justify the separation was them changing Hiccup and Toothless's dynamic to an owner and pet, which it never was. Hiccup and Toothless were always equals. Neither has more control over the other. Even literally, in flight, they both have some control but not all. They fly together. Yet, in this third film, their relationship is portrayed as toxic and having this unhealthy power dynamic. Like Hiccup was simply using Toothless as transportation or something and they weren't best friends or anything. In fact, one of the actual considerations for the third film was having Hiccup force Toothless to bow down to him. I think I might have just passed away if they went with that, because not only is that awful, but it's so wildly out of character for Hiccup. In the end, however, instead of making Hiccup a giant asshole to separate the two, they just wrote everyone else as giant assholes instead. Fun. Particularly Toothless, which I've already gone over. Hiccup is constantly told that he shouldn't be surprised that his best friend, that he almost died with several times, would no longer care about him at all after meeting some lady dragon. That he shouldn't be surprised if Toothless never comes back because he gave him his freedom.
Toothless and I will fly.
Toothless has the Light Fury now. He's probably not even coming back.
What?
You gave him his freedom, Hiccup. What were you expecting?
as if Toothless was ever trapped there against his will, or any of the dragons, their friends. Again, must I reiterate, Toothless risked his own life protecting Hiccup multiple times. Are we also forgetting about Cloudjumper and Velka, where Cloudjumper was the one who chose Velka? He literally took her away from her home. What is Cloudjumper seeking freedom from, exactly? The rider he chose? Are we forgetting that? Are we forgetting the entire plot point in Gift of the Night Fury, which is considered canon to the movies, by the way, because they mention it in the third movie, where at the end, Toothless refused to use the autotail that Hiccup made him? He literally smashed it, making it very clear to Hiccup that he didn't want to fly without him. There was no point in flying if it was without him. Toothless made that choice. Now yes, I get that Toothless might have changed his mind on that since then. Him not being able to fly on his own isn't ideal, he is a dragon. But they could have done that without including the toxic part. They actually could have made a really nice message about balancing platonic and romantic relationships. That both are important, and that these characters also have their own lives and need time to themselves. So Toothless could perhaps have an autotail that he could switch to the original one whenever. Instead of pulling the, oh no, Hiccup and Toothless's relationship from the start was toxic actually, you just didn't see it, to justify saying the characters needed to separate. But the real reason we got a separation ending was because the people making this movie wanted the same ending that the books had. Now, I have not read the books. I didn't even know there were books until like ages later when it was brought up as like a did you know thing. But yes, How to Train Your Dragon was originally a children's book series. At the end of the book series, apparently the dragons and the humans separate. Forever. The quote, "There were dragons when I was a boy," was ripped straight from the books. They wanted the same ending for the film, despite the book series and the movie series having virtually no connection apart from there being dragons, Vikings, and I think most of the characters' names carrying over, as well as the title, of course. Heck, in the book series, Toothless was actually a small green dragon, apparently actually a garden dragon of some kind. There was no dragon riding for Hiccup and Toothless in that. The Vikings and the dragons were also already coexisting in the book series before Hiccup even came around. And right from the beginning, it was made clear that dragons and humans should not coexist because in the book, it was an inherently unhealthy relationship. The dragons could also apparently talk in the book series. The books and the movies take vastly different directions. They're barely related. How to Train Your Dragon 3 just ripped an ending from a completely different story and tried to shoehorn it into their own, to try and tear-jerk people, I guess. Not only is there all of this, but sending all the dragons away doesn't even make sense on like a practical level. Sending away all of Berk's dragons does not mean all dragons. Are we forgetting that Berk was not the only place that had dragons? That's just one village. It's implied that dragons are everywhere, especially in the second film. It's probably safe to assume they're across the entire globe, actually. I mean, we got one shot in the third film that's located at Stonehenge, which is in England. And also this bit about Drago being a strange man from a strange land.
Into our midst came a stranger from a strange land.
Are we supposed to believe that all the other dragons across the rest of the world somehow knew this happened and just obliged? Somehow? Or did Toothless go out and find every last dragon across the globe and with his alpha magic bring them back to the hidden world? Are we not going to consider there are probably other alpha dragons already as well, like the Green Death or this snowy one that have their own dragon hives? Is Toothless just going to fight all of them? But okay, let's just pretend this does make sense. All dragons, including the ones in the ocean, because those are a thing, did go into the hidden world. Are we not going to talk about the actual implications of that? That is removing an entire group of animals from the entire planet, based on what a couple people did. What about literally anywhere else on the planet? Who's to say what the relationship between dragons and humans were elsewhere? Are we meant to believe that Berk was the only group on the planet that started coexisting with dragons? Just because Hiccup now thinks it's hopeless to achieve peace in his home, what makes him think, or Toothless think, they have the authority to decide that nobody else should be given a chance elsewhere? That's like saying, well, some people use dogs to hurt people, so dogs of all kinds are banned forever now, banished to the underground forever. Literally, what? Even if we move all this aside as well, are we just meant to believe the hidden world can even support all dragons? Is there enough prey food down there? What about dragons that aren't suited for underground living? Because there's clearly plenty of those. And yeah, the hidden world is supposed to be the birthplace of all dragons. It may have been, But some of these dragons clearly moved up from there a long time ago, if not most of them, and evolved to a life suited in the overworld. You can't just shove them all in a different environment and expect they will survive. That's like throwing a polar bear into a jungle and calling it a day, because, I don't know, bears came from the jungle originally, maybe? Or throw it in the ocean, may as well, all life evolved from there, so stick it into a hydrothermal vent. And you know what? Okay, fine. Let's say the Hidden World can support all dragons and has every biome they need. Why condemn the dragons to a life underground, in hiding forever? Is that a good way to live?
Our world doesn't deserve you. Yet.
So, if apparently Burke, or Hiccup, doesn't deserve the dragons, then who the hell does, exactly? Fighting for a better world was never going to be easy. We've seen that in the last two movies. It's never easy, but it's worth it. Not everyone will agree with you. It may even bring other new problems you didn't have before. But that doesn't mean you just throw up your hands and stop trying. I mean, the idea of Burke being overcrowded and the Burkians relying too much on their dragons could have been a neat thing if they also tied it in maybe with the fact that maybe Hiccup wasn't actually dealing very well with the death of his father and was doing this to cope. Though it really could have done without all this stupid shit, because this really doesn't make any sense. How flimsy did you build all your houses? Oh, and while I'm on the topic of Stoic being dead, I've heard some people say that the pacing in the second film isn't great, and I gotta disagree. This ties into my main point, don't worry, just wait for it. Because Stoic dies and then like 7 minutes later they're fine and go back into battle, except that kinda needed to happen. Burke was being attacked by a freaking bewilder beast. They kinda needed to get a move on. Which is another reason why it would have been interesting to explore the effects of Stoic's death more in the third film. Because Hiccup, and in extension everyone else really, didn't really get a lot of time to grieve about it, so I don't know. Could have been more interesting, but nah. Instead, the overcrowding is just played off as another reason for why dragons just actually can't live in peace with humans. I don't know, I guess all the dragons' stink was fogging up everyone's brains, so they stopped building houses properly. And hey, besides all this, are we seriously meant to assume that nobody disagrees with this separation anyway? Like, for real? Not one single dragon who has a different opinion and wants to stay? Not one person? They all just oblige? Because Grimmel was too scary even though he's been defeated anyway? Not Cloudjumper and Velka? Not this lady and her 50 little terrible terrors? Not Astrid and Stormfly? Nobody? This all just happens because the Light Fury and Toothless now want to leave. Why is everyone else just obeying them? And I must bring this up again. The Light Fury only gets about, roughly, 15 minutes of screen time in this 1 hour and 44 minute movie. Toothless decides, after only seeing her like 2 times, so not even the full 15 minutes, that he wants to leave Hiccup behind forever. With the attitude that Toothless has in this film, treating Hiccup and the rest of Burke really the way he does, Toothless is the one that is truly undeserving here. Hiccup and friends had so many other options instead of separation. They could have moved to another island, become nomads, they could have gone back to Burke, really, or better yet, why not just move to the Hidden World? This was Hiccup's entire idea, and he was constantly ridiculed for it, but honestly, why? I've seen this suggested by a few people now, and honestly, it would have been pretty neat. When Hiccup and Astrid first find the Hidden World, they are met with hostility by the dragons. Toothless has to save them, and they leave the place. And hey, isn't this similar to how in the first film, dragons coming to Burke were met with hostility by the Burkians? So wouldn't it be kind of a fitting narrative choice to have the dragons learn, via Toothless, that the Burkians weren't out to hurt them, and then the dragons invited them into their world? It would literally be like a reverse of the first film. They could have just gone off the map like that, this mysterious village that, I don't know, goes out and frees dragons sometimes and other neat stuff. Still, I would also not include the all dragons going to the Hidden World now, with this alternate ending. If we're being real here, I'd basically change everything about this film, but I digress. The way they tried to shoehorn in the idea of the Hidden World was also very obvious. They did it through flashbacks of the character who died in the second film, Stoic, Hiccup's father. They're basically flashbacks to when Hiccup was a young boy, and Stoic is talking to him about the Hidden World. And honestly, I don't understand the point of this other than finding an excuse to show Stoic again and a younger version of Hiccup. It honestly doesn't make sense that Stoic would even know about this given his attitude in the first film. He just talks about the dragon's nest, and that's about the extent of it. Why would he be so determined about going to just the nest if he knew there was a hidden world? Wouldn't he have just tried to go there to seal it up, as he says? It would have been better if they just had Toothless find the hidden world through the Light Fury, and that's how they found out about it. The flashbacks with Stoic were just wasted screen time they could have used for something else. In the end, this film ultimately feels like to me that it was trying really hard to make those of us in the audience who liked the first film to feel emotional about this ending, and try to trick us into thinking it was good because of that. I mean, they literally pull this, doing like a reverse scene from I think the most well-known scene, besides Test Drive, from How to Train Your Dragon, Forbidden Friendship, all to try to get us to feel emotional about it. But the hidden world doesn't achieve anything really emotional on its own. It relies solely on the previous two films, the connection people already had with these characters, to make this separation sad, by tearing down what those films actually built up already. Without the films previous, the hidden world really has nothing to prop itself up with. How to Train Your Dragon 3 threw in basically the same effect as a character death to emotionally manipulate its viewers. It's pretty awful, really, and then they have the gall to throw in emotional scenes from the previous two films in the credits. They really knew that part of the audience, huh? Well, it didn't work on me. Well, it did at first, but not anymore! I know I said I wouldn't entertain this, but actually let's for just a moment. But this is a kid's film, just turn your brain off argument. Isn't it funny how the first film, and the second one, it didn't need this kind of excuse? I don't really need to say any more than that, do I? Besides, is this what we must expect from movies now? We should just expect kids' films to be bad? Full of plot holes, terrible writing, and harmful ideas? Do kids not need good films? You really want kids to watch this and just eat it up as pretty colours and forget about it 10 minutes after viewing? And then when they get older and see it again, they realise that, man, that wasn't actually very good. No wonder I forgot about it. My heart goes out to the kids that were like 11 when The Hidden World released, and that was their experience of How to Train Your Dragon. Oh, and also Grimmel as a villain was pretty subpar. He has these scary moments, but honestly he was just Drago take 2, and the movie honestly could have done without him, but anyways. So really, at the end of all of this, what do we get? What is this film trying to say? What are the messages it's trying to convey? What are we left with? Well, if we include the two movies previous, the messages are rather confused, to say the least. And if we look at the messages of the final film alone, they are actually quite harmful. This film portrays a very toxic and unhealthy way of thinking towards relationships. One where you cannot and should not have a healthy balance between platonic and romantic relationships. You can only have one or the other, and romantic relationships are ultimately the end goal. Marriage, or growing up, for some reason involves forgetting about all your dreams, your goals, ambitions, your interests, your friends. You have to leave all of that behind. Hiccup is forced to leave all of that behind, and it's portrayed as a good thing. Seeking help from others is also framed as a bad thing to do, where the film implies you actually need to overcome your problems on your own and should ask help from no one. This way of thinking is not only extremely unhealthy and potentially dangerous, but also ableist. Asking help from people is far from a shameful thing to do. Then you have the sexism and the shallowness of Toothless and the Light Fury's relationship, if you could even call it that, and you get this dumpster fire of a movie. Then you also pair it with the last two films as well, and, well, yeah, these movies' messages don't line up in the slightest. The first two films are about the power of friendship and how it matters just as much as any other type of relationship. Teamwork, becoming stronger together, unity. The third film contradicts all of this heavily. How to Train Your Dragon 3, The Hidden World, is a bland mess at best and harmful at worst. It breaks my heart to have seen it go down this path. How to Train Your Dragon and its characters deserved better than this. The Light Fury deserved better than this. If you want to watch a good movie franchise like this that is actually great beyond the first and second film, go watch Kung Fu Panda. Go watch those movies. They're actually really good. Like, the second film I actually almost love more than the first. Yes, I'm kind of biased to this character. I mean, he's literally perfect. You gonna argue with me? Look at him. Look at this guy. Anyways, that was a long one. I actually had to record this twice because on my first recording my microphone just was being really weird and I couldn't use half of the recording. This took a while to make. But I hope you enjoyed my glorified rant, and thank you very much for watching. And you must know how long I put off having to watch How to Train Your Dragon 3 again to make this, but I did find myself liking How to Train Your Dragon 2 much more than I remembered, which was a pleasant surprise, so there's that. But yeah, while I'm here also, I never made an announcement video about this, but I also have a Patreon, because I do art, and currently I'm trying to write my own story that I want to turn into a webcomic one of these days. So yeah, I don't know, if you want to see lots of lizard people and dragons, animations, and lots of art in general, or you just want to help an artist out, my Patreon is there, linked in the description. But again, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one, which will most likely be back to my normal content of speed paints and art and whatnot. But yeah, see ya!